All right, what's up, guys? Hope you're doing well. Hey, today we're going to do a shorter video. It's going to be a test video. We're going to test three types of takeoffs. Respected member of the aviation community suggested to try taking off in a three-point attitude. And at first I thought, that seems, there's no way that's going to be draggy. You know, this airplane's got a lot of angle of attack. You're knocking down a lot of air with those wings. I just can't see that being better. But then I thought, hey, let's give it a shot. If nothing else, it should be really consistent because the airplane's going to fly as soon as it's ready to fly. And the other types of techniques that a person would use, you're relying on rotating at the proper time. The airspeed indicator doesn't even react fast enough to show you any meaningful data, so you're doing it by feel, which is good. There's nothing wrong with that. Your butt tells you most of what you need to know when you're flying, especially after you've put a little time in an airplane. But I could see there being a consistency difference here. So if nothing else, it'd be worth knowing that. So yeah, we got some things to try. So let's head over to the hangar and we'll get started. Man, this is a terrible idea. What the hell am I doing out here in the cold? The wind is not blowing that hard. I'll tell you what, that breeze doesn't feel too good. It's like 20-something degrees out here. And I am apparently not dressed quite properly. I'm going to try to go clean off a spot. I packed down the runway so it'd be more of a consistent between runs. You're not knocking down fresh snow on some runs and not on others. But I got to dig enough snow out of there that I got a place to get enough traction to be able to lift my tail on the brakes for that version of the takeoff. The idea is to try three different takeoffs. A normal takeoff, roll out, pick up the tail, yank back, pop some flaps. Pretty consistent, works pretty well. Second one is what I think should be the shortest. That is, I'll pick the tail up on the brakes, hold it, and then roll out straight. Theoretically, that should be better because, sorry, I'm out of breath. I just got done shoveling that snow. The wings are streamlined. It's going to be the least amount of drag in theory. Roll out, pop flaps, go. And then, of course, the third is to try this three-point takeoff. And I'll try it a couple different ways, both holding some back pressure and also then waiting and then bringing in some back pressure when I think it's time. Using flaps, just trying different things to see the best version of that. I do predict that'll be the most consistent, but I don't know that it'll be the shortest. In theory, it shouldn't be. There should be more drag, but we'll see. That's why we're out here trying this. So I scraped off enough of the runway that hopefully I can get it to stick on the brakes enough to pick up the tail. I like that method. It's a little more technical, but it's fun, and it should be pretty streamlined, and it also allows you to see where you're going right from the get-go, which is nice. So I'm taking off in something that's where I've got to have a really specific line that can be beneficial to pick it up and go. But anyway, this is more STOL contest oriented because in the real world, you guys know most of my stuff's out in the sticks, so to speak, up on hills and canyons and whatever. I wouldn't necessarily use that three-point because tail wheel is a weak link. It's obviously a lot smaller tire than the mains, and I wouldn't want to be pulling back pressure and pushing that into rough ground and rocks and ditches and whatever else like that. So, we use different techniques for out in the real stuff, out in the shit, so to speak, versus doing a SOL contest. And SOL contests are awesome. Don't get me wrong, I've competed in a handful. They're a blast. I'd love to do more. A little bit different in technique variation. So anyway, okay, I'll stop talking. We will get this sucker warmed up. Been preheating it all night. Yeah, we'll get warmed up, get out there and give it a shot. All right, so first up, just a more traditional takeoff, roll out, pick up the tail, then pop little flaps and rotate. and we'll see about approximately where that came off the ground. Take note of a couple of things around the area. This is right where the wheels are coming off the ground, and then we'll kind of do an overlay and compare with some of the other takeoffs. All right, let's look at that same style takeoff again and see how it is for consistency. Kind of doesn't look like it, but these are actually the same marks. I watched both video clips very carefully and compared them, and those are the same marks. It's just a little bit of different angle from the camera makes them look different, and the wind was having an effect on the snow and actually changing things a little bit. Anyway, as you can see, pretty consistent, slight difference between them, but again, the wind's blowing and everything. There's obviously going to be a little bit of difference there. I would say overall that's a fairly consistent takeoff. Okay, the next takeoff will be the one where I pick up the tail and then carry it out straight, which should be the shortest. I'm making this prediction now. I haven't actually watched the footage, but I'm going to say it's probably the least consistent just because the workload is a little higher to, keep that tail up and keep the airplane level and then accelerate out and take off that way. So predictions are it'll be the shortest and the most inconsistent. All right, looks like the wheels came off right about here. And this was pretty short. I'll advance in slow motion. You can see those marks on the ground are quite a bit further in front of the airplane this time, so that was really short. Okay, here's another run, picking up the tail and carrying it out. We'll see how it compares for consistency. Okay, so here I'm alternating the shots back and forth with an arrow pointed at this mark on the snow that was unique that I could pick out real easily. I am really surprised. Look how this is very consistent, much more than I would have guessed. So that's a kind of a shock to me. Okay, so now it's time to do the 3-point takeoff. We'll see how it works out. All right, let's take a look at a couple of them here and see how consistent they were. So due to the snow and the wind, the ground actually was changing as I was doing these runs the way it looks, but it also gives us actually something to look at. If there was no snow on the ground, I think it actually would have been harder to figure this out. And anyway, if you look at this, it looks to me like it was very consistent. I mean, these were almost an identical spot where it was leaving the ground. So okay, that actually does make sense. That's kind of was the prediction, but interesting to see. Okay, we've seen each run individually and kind of how they compare consistency-wise. Let's look at the runs together. Let's look at them, versus each other now for takeoff distance. This takeoff was the longest. That sharp indentation that was in the snow on the left side of the airplane that I've been pointing to throughout the video is actually behind the tires in this view, which means this is a longer takeoff. Okay, to my surprise, both picking up the tail and then rolling out and the 3-point ended up right about the same place. I did not expect that. So, now honestly, I think I could take off shorter by picking up the tail and rolling out, because one thing I noticed is by the time I rotated, I had more airspeed than I needed. And you can just tell by how positive the climb was. The airspeed indicator was reading higher than it actually needs to be. And again, that's due to there's just a lot of things happening, and you end up slightly behind the airplane. This airplane's powerful. It takes off quick. Everything happens quickly. So I still think that method is better, but I'm looking at the results, and I wasn't able to actually prove that. So I'll have to go back out and try again, because like I say, I think it will produce the shortest takeoff, but it's definitely more of a workload than that 3-point, and that 3-point is very consistent. So kind of interesting. Now, obviously, different airplanes are different. Some airplanes are not powerful enough to probably take off in that 3-point. It probably would really hurt you. It definitely is draggy, but it also flies off at the very lowest speed it can. So, interesting stuff. Not exactly what I thought was going to happen. I kind of learned something from this, and it was, kind of interesting, actually. All right, so what's the takeaway from this? Well, if I was doing a STOL contest, I might come out with my first run and just do the 3-point. It's going to be consistent. It's going to get you a good, solid number. And then, once you got a solid number in the book, then go out and get fancy. Pick up the tail, try to yank it off at a lower speed. Like I say, I still believe it's capable of doing it, but it's much more dependent upon the guy running the stick. So, interesting stuff. All right, guys, leave me a comment and let me know what you think. I'm just going to leave you guys with a little bit of flying footage from just here recently. One day here, just the other day, I went out. It was one of those days that just looked like it was going to be a good sunset with some pretty good clouds. And I wanted to get a shot with the Spanish Peaks in the background, but wasn't able to get in close enough. The wind was super strong. At one point here, you might not be able to see it on the GPS, but I had 166 mile an hour ground speed one direction and a 6 mile an hour ground speed in a climb the opposite direction. So the wind was rolling over those mountains, and it was pretty rough. Couldn't get in as close as I wanted. Did land over at a canyon that I like to play on, and got a pretty cool shot from a distance. I'll show you here. That came out pretty good. Here's a shot of leaving that canyon. I used part of the road to take off to get out of there. I'd landed over in the field, but it was fairly muddy, and I try to keep the mud off the plane as much as possible. It's a pain to clean off later. Had some wind to deal with here on this spot. This is another fun one. It's kind of in the middle of a canyon. It's not actually an island, but it's kind of this little plateau right out in the middle of a really pretty canyon. All right, guys, hopefully you got something out of that. I did. I learned something. I thought it was kind of interesting. The results are not quite what I expected, but that was fun. Thanks, guys, for watching. Patreons, thank you very much. And I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas, and we will see you again soon. All right, take care.